So we are started with very famous communist from USA. Hi, Caleb, comrade.
Hi, good to meet you.
So we start with the delay because you were interviewed by RT. Have you heard that RT? Wait. I have some problem here.
Sure.
Okay. Now it's uh, because you were interviewed by RT. Have you heard that RT is banned in the France? The repression against RT began several years before the start of the special military operation in Ukraine. RT, Sputnik, Press TV, and many other media from outside the West covered all the protests of the French Yellow Vest movement. And at the same time, as the demonstrators attacked the French bourgeois media such as BFM TV, which denigrated the protesters, they were very kind to the media such as RT. This led to a tragedy, and RT journalists were attacked by the police. One was shot with a rubber bullet and was probably taken to hospital. This is what freedom of speech is like in France in Macron's time.
Well,
Any comment?
I need to clarify. I wasn't being interviewed by RT. I was reporting. That is my job. I'm the RT reporter based in New York City, and so I was covering that the $61 billion aid package for Ukraine was just passed, along with $8 billion for Taiwan and $9 billion for Israel. And the U.S. Congress has been deadlocked over this for months, and they finally voted to pass these aid packages. So it's a very big, important news story for Russia and for the world, because it's going to prolong the conflict. So that's what I was doing. I was covering it, and I needed to, cover the vote that just happened. But I know that RT is illegal in all European Union countries, as well as in Britain. And it's really outrageous because these are the very countries that lecture the world about free speech and freedom of the press and freedom of information. Yet they go out of their way to suppress news from certain countries. In the United States, everyone who works with RT has been forced to register under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which is a huge suppression of civil liberties. The government keeps on file all of our names and all of our associations. And, RT America ultimately shut down under the pressure. Now I work directly with RT International in Moscow through like a parent company, but that parent company is forced to register with the Department of Justice. It's very outrageous. All of their talk of freedom of speech, all their talk of a free marketplace of ideas, it doesn't apply to anti-imperialist countries.
And what do the American workers thinking about this? That all the time when they want to go to hospital, they say, no, we don't have money for your medical care. We don't have money to renovating streets, renovating bridges. We don't have money for the American working class, but we have money for the Nazi government and the Ukrainian oligarchs from Ukraine.
Well, there's widespread opposition, more than I've ever seen in my life, to foreign interventions. It's mainly from conservatives, working class people in red states who have seen their country deteriorate, the industrial base become eradicated, living standards go down, and there's a lot of anger among the American working class about foreign aid, about aid to Ukraine, aid to Israel, aid to other countries. And that's why Donald Trump was quite popular when he used the slogan America First, because he was saying, why don't we spend our money here rather than on these places around the world? He was framing it in more of a nationalist sense, but he was appealing to the fact that the American people are really tired of all these wars. And the opposition to these wars, during the 1960s, the Vietnam War, it was like hippies, kind of middle class young people. Now it's the working class, the people who have relatives in the military who have to fight these wars. They're the ones that oppose it. And in fact, members of the U.S. military are more opposed to U.S. military interventions in wars than the general public is. Right now, we have a very, very rising level of anti-imperialist consciousness among the public. Unfortunately, the communist groups have turned their back on the working class, and they are trying to defend the establishment from Donald Trump. And so they're not capturing this rising sentiment against the establishment, against the wars. It's becoming common sense among Americans that there's a small elite group that controls the country, that they wage wars around the world that are not in the interests of the people. That's becoming common sense. People know that. And now is the time. Center for Political Innovation, my organization, we say out of the movement to the masses. It's time to organize the people, the American people, and it's time to stop pandering and trying to position ourselves in the so-called left. And this is what Lenin said during World War I. He said, it's time to go lower and deeper to the real masses. That is the response to opportunism. So that's what we intend to do, out of the movement to the masses.
It is very all this situation with Ukraine is very interesting from the Marxist point of view for me, because all my life I have listened the bullshit that it is not possible that you will have houses free, transport free, healthcare free, and in the 90s, and when we have in Poland the capitalist contra-revolution, that was very, very hard time for the Polish working class. And one day, 2 years ago, few millions of the Ukrainians came to Poland, and we have seen that socialism is possible. That socialism, that some kind of people have free houses, free transport, free healthcare. Unfortunately, it was not for the Polish citizens, not for the Polish working class. But I am happy that the Polish bourgeoisie shown that socialism is possible. Unfortunately, not for us.
Yeah. Well, that shows you that, again, we're against imperialism, a global international system. And that system, it can conveniently do things for its own interest. It can always find the money for the wars. They can always find money to fund psychological operations, to control people's minds. But yes, when it comes to meeting people's basic services and needs, they suddenly don't have it, right? Austerity. And there's two forms of austerity. There's free market neoliberal austerity, like we see with this president of Argentina, the so-called libertarian. They're trying to cut government services, cut government jobs, cut healthcare, cut benefits, etc. And then we see, with the liberals, with BlackRock, with Bill Gates, with the Democratic Party in the United States, they are pushing degrowth. There's just too many people in the world, overpopulation. We need to reduce consumption. We need to tax people on driving cars. We need to make people pay more for gasoline. We need to disincentivize people to have children. We want people to own nothing and be happy about it. From the left and the right, their message is that working people must pay for the crisis that the capitalists and their system has created, which is spawned by the computer revolution. It's a crisis of overproduction, the tendency of the falling rate of profit, a value crisis where there is poverty because of abundance. There is so much housing that people are homeless. There's so much food that people are hungry. This is a deeply irrational system of capitalism. And the computer revolution makes, production more efficient than ever before. If we had a rational society, self-driving cars would be a great thing, because driving would no longer be necessary and all that human labor power could be expended elsewhere. But self-driving cars in the United States would lead to millions and millions of workers unemployed and out on the streets. This isn't rational, right? And this is the problem with the capitalist mode of production. And it calls for society to take control of the means of production, the banks, factories, and industries, the centers of economic power, the oil wells. These things should be public property and organized to serve all of society, not the profits of a wealthy few.
All these things with degrow is very, very funny from the European perspective, especially from the German perspective. I am learning German language now, so every day I am listening German media, and we have government in Germany where we have Green Party. And Green Party all the time speak about ecology, about the degrowth stuff like this. And this government is the most militarized government of Germany after Hitler. That Scholz are not only make very big budget for the German army, not only sending the German soldiers to the Baltic states, but also German now is the country which send a lot of weapons to the Ukraine. And it's crazy that this guy said we don't need to use the cars with oil because it is not ecological. And in the same time, they sent tanks to the Ukraine, and the tanks in Ukraine it serve ecology and stuff like this. It's very funny.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a real continuity between the new left that was formed to oppose Marxism and fascism. Because, starting in the 1950s, the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency launched a program called the Congress for Cultural Freedom. And they funded a variety of different projects that tried to reinvent socialist and left-wing politics to, move against the Soviet Union. And they had a magazine in Germany called Der Monat. And that magazine subsidized a lot of the thinkers that were associated with what they called the Frankfurt School in West Germany, which was an anti-communist, Marxist intellectual tradition. These other intellectuals like that. And you also had in the United States, you had Partisan Review magazine. In Britain, you had Encounter. This was all paid for by the CIA. And they reinvented socialism. Marxism and socialism is about historical progress, raising living standards, having rational control of the means of production in order to increase the life expectancy, increase the quality of life, aiming for the ultimate goal of communism, a society with so much wealth and abundance that the very need for a state can fade away. And we can have a society where there's so much wealth that people can just take what they need and do what they feel like doing, to each according to his own ability, to each according to his need, right? That's Marx. And that requires vast abundance. But the new left very much wants to go backward. They think that human progress has gone too far, and they want to go to some kind of ideal. They draw a lot from Eastern mysticism and feudalism in the East. They admire the Tibetan regime of the Dalai Lama. They admire the ancient Indian caste system. And they focus on trying to get people to not want to expand, to not have more than they already have. They want to get the world back into balance with nature. The Nazis loved this kind of stuff, right? The Nazis were all about this kind of Eastern mysticism. They were all about degrowth. They were all about the caste system in ancient India, where everyone is born into their caste position and no one rebels and there's no strikes. And there's a very hierarchical society. These are all fascist ideas, but thanks to the meddling of Western governments and intelligence agencies, a lot of people think that this is left. And the Green Party in Germany is a great example of that. They're not a Marxist party. They're not advocates of socialism. They are fascists, right? I mean, they want to arm the fascists in Ukraine. They want to reduce the living standards and drive down the population. They glorify some kind of primitive Eastern society without technology and development. This is fascist thinking, but it's been rebranded as socialism and leftism. So I think that's what that reflects.
Oh, it was created by in the 1970s by the guy who was in the SS before. But it is another history. I know that you are doing very good job in writing the history of the revolutionary movement, the history of the communist workers movement. Maybe one day you will make a book about the Nazis tradition in the Green Party, because it's very interesting.
Yeah, well, I get into it in this book, Where is America Going? Marxism, MAGA, and the Coming Revolution. And this is the book that I wrote. It's currently being published in Chinese. In China, it will be published and circulated. It's gotten reviewed in the Global Times, which is one of the main newspapers in China. And in the book, I talk about how the liberals very much are trying to save capitalism from a crisis of overproduction, how many working people see Donald Trump as a way to resist the degrowth agenda of the ultra-rich and their wars. And this book has been widely circulated. It was featured on Kim Iverson's television show, And this is kind of the book that kind of lays out our perspective as the Center for Political Innovation. It's kind of it's a 4-part text that we have published, explaining the crisis of overproduction, the rise of socialism around the world, where we want to go forward.
I will make. Okay, so we are live, and the cameras from Poland waited for you. I also waited.
Thank you for your patience. I do appreciate it. I had no idea I was going to have to cover breaking news today, so thank you.
No. So first question, Comrade Caleb, could you comment on Russell Bentley's murder?
It's very tragic. I had the honor of interviewing Russell Bentley, Texas, for my Rumble channel. It was a great conversation. This was a brave American who saw the rise of fascism in Ukraine and went and fought in Donetsk. He had a family, wife, and it's a deeply, deeply tragic situation. And I'm deeply saddened to hear that we finally do have confirmation that he is indeed no longer with us. There was some confusion. There was some, confusion about it, but apparently we do now have confirmation that he has passed, and he will be mourned. And he comes from a great tradition of Americans, like the Abraham Lincoln Brigade that went and fought against Franco in Spain. There were the Flying Tigers, Americans who went to Japan or went to China to fight against Japan, to be air pilots, to work with Mao. There was a very famous Canadian named Norman Bethune, who was a doctor, and he went to China to aid the Chinese people in the fight against Japan. Communist International Volunteers who see that fascism is on the rise and put their lives on the line and go to some foreign land to fight for justice. There's a long tradition of that. And Russell Bentley will be remembered as a great hero of the international working class and of anti-imperialism.
I can say that I also make interviews with him, and he mentioned that the Polish soldiers or the Polish mercenaries in Ukraine, they are fighting in the second line. That in the first line there are Ukrainians, and the Ukrainians who retreat are killed by the mercenaries from all over the world, but also by the mercenaries from the Poland. It was this conversations was here, but this fragment we translated to Polish, and the Polish peoples were crazy about this. That how dare you talking about? But he knew the news. He was there in Donbass, so, and he know the people, and he know of also the Ukrainians who chosen freedom and going to Russia, not to serve to Zelensky's regime.
Yeah.
So I prepared some questions before. I have been watching your channel for many years, and there are many different topics that I would like to talk about with you. However, due to the tense situation in the Middle East, I would like to start our conversation with Iran. Can you tell us how you see Iran's role in the international anti-imperialist movement? Can you tell us what is Iran's attitude towards various national liberation movements, such as the Irish IRA or the movement of Nelson Mandela, who fought against apartheid? The radical left in Western countries, and especially the Trotskyists, are today slandering Iran, repeating all the imperialist lies about it. You were in Iran, you talked to the most important politician in this country. What can you say about this?
Wow. Well, I have been to Iran a number of times. I made a film in Iran about my experiences. You can watch. I have seen the supreme leader. I've been in the same room as him. I met with Ahmadinejad, the former president of Iran, and I then sat down and did an interview at the United Nations in September with the current president of Iran, Riazi. Iran is a center of anti-imperialism. You mentioned the Irish freedom struggle. The Iranian Islamic Republic, when it was first formed in the early 80s, gave weapons and military support to the IRA in their fight against the British Empire. There's a street today in Tehran, the capital city of Iran, named for Bobby Sands, the martyr of the Irish freedom struggle, the hunger strike prisoner who died in Longkesh in 1981. The Iranians also aided Nelson Mandela in his fight against apartheid. Iran is very close to North Korea. It's very close to Venezuela in particular. They helped resolve the food crisis in Venezuela. They set up supermarkets in Venezuela. Iran and Venezuela are very, very close. Iran is the center of anti-imperialist resistance in the Middle East. And that may not fit the preconceived notions people have, because Iran is not a Marxist country. They reject Marxism. They call their system not capitalism, but Islam, neither East nor West. And, it's not a Soviet style economy, but it is largely a state run economy. They have revolutionary committees in every neighborhood called Basij councils. And Iran is the center of anti-imperialism. And I think we should understand that anti-imperialism and socialism, as they emerge in different parts of the world, are going to look differently. Right? We shouldn't assume that it's always going to espouse the same ideology. And I think that Iran, because it had a revolution that was against the imperialists, because the main allies of their revolution, even though they were quite reluctant to embrace them, but in the long term, they had no choice. The main allies of their revolution have been communists like China, like Venezuela, like Nicaragua. I think Iran is, at this point, part of the new emerging economy opposing Western capitalism. They call their allies in the Middle East the axis of resistance. So I view the Islamic Republic of Iran in a very positive light, despite the fact that they have a different ideology, right? They see things in terms of Shia Islam and the Shia revolutionary Islamic tradition.
And what can you say about this crazy situation that Israel attacked a few days ago the Iran consulate in Damascus, killed some Iranian citoyens, and yesterday the Western countries introduced the sanctions, but not sanctions against Israel, but sanctions against Iran. It's crazy.
Sure. It looks to me like Netanyahu is trying to provoke an all-out regional war, and in order to hold on to his political power. And yes, Iran was brutally attacked, illegally attacked. They attacked the Iranian embassy in Damascus. They killed a top Iranian general, and Iran retaliated against Israel. And then Israel did a very, very small retaliation against Iran. A couple, quadcopter drones were shot down. So it looks to me like at this point, Netanyahu really wants to provoke a regional war and draw the United States into the region. But the United States knows that that would result in bringing Russia and China in, and an all-out, third world war that could have nuclear implications. And so I think that the United States isn't totally thrilled to do that with Netanyahu, but there are different agendas, and Netanyahu's facing a lot of opposition at home, and he's trying to prolong the crisis in Gaza that began since October 7th. He's trying to prolong that as long as he can. And part of trying to do that is to provoke regional instability rather than just, continue his brutal genocidal bombardment of Gaza.
The second interesting topic is Russia. A few weeks ago, you were in Sochi and talked to President Putin. Can you tell us something about the youth festival in Sochi? Who was there? What was the atmosphere like? Have you talked to the Russian communists?
I have. In 2018, I was embedded with the presidential campaign of Pavel Grudinin, who was the Russian communist candidate for president in 2018. When I covered the election, I was at their headquarters on election night. And then, recently I was the chair of the US delegation to the World Youth Festival. There's the communist countries of the world. Historically, they had what were called the World Festivals of Youth and Students, which were international gatherings. And they meant a lot to Russians in particular. It was a time they got to meet people from different countries. And I have been to the World Festival of Youth and Students in Quito, Ecuador. And I was at the World Festival of Youth and Students in Sochi in 2017. And then Russia started its own new brand called World Youth Festival. They had the first one in Sochi, and I was the chair of the American delegation. We had a press conference at the United Nations beforehand, and then I went to the festival. And at the festival, I was selected to ask a question to the Russian president, and that was quite exciting. It was a great honor. I asked him about how the American people oppose aid to Ukraine and what we should do, and he urged Americans to speak out against their government. It was quite an honor to be able to do that. And if you look at that, sitting next to me were members of the All China Youth Federation of China. There were also people in the audience that were part of the Ho Chi Minh Communist Youth Union of Vietnam. There were young people from Uganda, young people from Zimbabwe, young people from many different countries at that festival and in that room with me, about 300 youth that had the opportunity to engage with the Russian president. It was a great opportunity. And that is the global anti-imperialist movement in that room, right? Those are young anti-imperialists. That's who they are. And that's important to understand because, a lot of people in the West like to talk about being communists and all of that, but the actual communist governments of the world were in that room with me. And the actual communist governments in the world all support Russia and Ukraine. There's a lot of jokers in America and Britain and France who think they're communists but don't support Russia. But all the actual communist governments do support Russia and Ukraine.
Ты понимаешь по-русски?
I don't speak Russian, no.
No, it's because when if you start to learn the Russian language, it's very easy to learn Polish language also.
Okay.
Because I can, if you want, I can give you some lesson because I'm from this tradition, Bolshevik tradition of the Soviet poet Mayakovsky, that I need to learn Russian to understand Lenin, because it was the language of Lenin. So these languages, we have a lot of problem in Poland, because Poland now is a very Russophobic country. But we have a lot of similarities. For example, when we count, in Polish it is jeden, in Russian it is один, dwa, dwa, trzy, trzy, cztery, cztery, pięć, pięć, sześć, sześć, siedem, siedem, osiem, osiem, dziewięć, dziewięć, dziesięć, dziesięć. You see, very, very similar. I hope that it's good to learning Russian languages now, because when in the time of this anti-Russian campaign, Russophobic campaign, that it is not only campaign against the Russian politicians, but also it is a campaign against Russian language, Russian writers, against. I am not against the campaign against Solzhenitsyn, for example. If they want to destroy the books of the Solzhenitsyn or another guys like him, I don't have problem. But they destroy a lot of good books. Now I would like to talk to you about religion. I was born in People's Poland, and the capitalist counter-revolution in my country was co-organized by the Catholic Church with the special participation of Polish Pope John Paul II. With the restoration of capitalism, a theocratic state was introduced in Poland, symbolized by the ban of abortion. This is why, like most communists in Poland, are very critical of the Catholic religion. You are a Christian. How do you assess the Vatican's role in destroying the socialist bloc?
Well, I'm a Protestant. That is my religious tradition. I am Irish, but my last name is French because I'm descended from the Huguenots, which were Protestant dissidents in France who moved to Northern Ireland because they were Protestant, and the British, moved them to Northern Ireland when they were expelled from France. So I'm an Irish American with a French last name, and I'm Protestant. And my family, are from rural areas in the United States. We're from farmers and very religious background. I'm descended from some important religious leaders in American history, a guy named Charles G. Finney and such. That's my background. And I grew up in a very small town where people were very, very religious, but I'm not Roman Catholic. And, many of my comrades are Roman Catholic. There's, a lot of Irish Catholics that work with my organization. There's a lot of Latin American and Asian American Catholics who work with them. My feeling, and I wrote an article about this a long time ago, is that the politics of the Vatican very much follow the politics of the European mainland, the Western European mainland countries, France, Germany, Italy. What those governments and what the ruling classes of those countries do kind of defines the Vatican's politics. You'll notice that in the 1950s, the Catholic Church was in a very anti-communist frenzy. But then you'll notice in the 1960s, you had Vatican II, and the Vatican began to criticize the U.S. on Vietnam. And then in the 80s, even though the Vatican was against communism in Poland and other places, the Vatican was very critical of U.S. policy in Latin America. And a lot of Catholic priests and nuns were protesting against U.S. foreign policy in Nicaragua and El Salvador and other countries. So the Vatican shifts based on what the European mainland does. There's a rivalry between the European mainland imperialists, the French imperialists, the German imperialists, the Italian imperialists, and the British and the American imperialists, right? And there's a lot of manifestations of that inter-imperialist rivalry. World War I was largely a manifestation of that. The Germans represented the European mainland and their desire as an up-and-coming imperial power to displace the power of the British and the Americans that were like ahead of them in imperialism. And World War II was with the rise of Hitler. You saw German imperialism trying to re-seize its colonies and reestablish itself as a colonizer and as an imperialist. And the British and the American imperialists teamed up with the Soviet Union to oppose them. And that is the main division among the imperialists. The Vatican tends to follow the European mainland. So sometimes they will do things that are against the British and American imperialists, representing their alliance with the French, the Germans, the Italians. But most of the time, they are still imperialists, right? I will say the Vatican is more pro-China than the United States is. The Vatican, has established good relations with the government in China. The official legal Catholic Church of China has been recognized by the Vatican. For a long time, the Vatican only recognized the illegal underground Catholic Church in China, but that has changed. And I view the Vatican as representing Western European imperialist powers. In particular, I know in Poland, there was something called the Solidarność, the union that was used against socialism, that was funded by the American government and the CIA. And Pope John Paul II in particular played a role in manipulating Poland's politics, fomenting unrest, and setting the stage for the overthrow of socialism by manipulating this union, right? And my understanding is the leader of the Solidarność union in Poland was not only Roman Catholic, he was very anti-Semitic, and that he believed that communism was a conspiracy by the Jews, etc. You probably know far more about that than I do, but that is my understanding. I view the Catholic Church as shifting its political alliances based on the interests of Western European imperial powers.
Yes, it's a very important, interesting subject. I can say that when we talk about the relations between the socialist Poland and the Catholic Church, the very interesting is the first years of the socialist Poland. In the time when Stalin was alive, and we have this problem that the 1/3 of the Polish territory before the war, it was the German territory, and in the practice of the Vatican, if you are a bishop, you are a bishop all your life. You can be dismissed that you are bishop. So So the two big cities like Wrocław and Szczecin were in Poland after 1945, but had the German bishops. And Polish Polish Workers' Party uses this to show that the Vatican is against Poland. That the Vatican supported Germany in this question, and they tried to make the Polish National Church something like in the time of the Reformation in 16th that in England or another country, that we have we can have the church, but church which is independent from outside, independent from Vatican, and it was the movement of the księży patriotów, the priest of the patriot priest. But unfortunately, when Gomułka take a power in 1956, he destroyed this thing, and he had a better relation with the Catholics. But we need to know that all this propaganda which exists today, that Catholic Church was always against socialism, it's not true. That in reality, in the socialist Poland, it was very good for the Catholics for two reasons. It was first time in the Polish history when Poland became one religion state. That before, Poland were always a country with many religions, with Jewish religions, Orthodox religions, Protestant religions, and we have the state with tolerate all these religions. In socialist Poland, the paradox was that the Catholics became the only religion in Poland. And it was the time that in socialist Poland, they built a lot of churches. That all this propaganda that the communists were against Christians, against religion, it's not true, because when you are going to Poland, you see the churches everywhere. And when these churches were built in socialist times, so it's and also in the time when we have these big strikes in 1980s, which provoked to creation the Solidarność. The pronunciation of this movement is Solidarność. So and the guy what was a leader is Lech Wałęsa, the most stupid worker in the Polish society who ever existed. So this the Primas Glemp, he said that I am against this strike. You workers, you need to come back to work. So
very good. Yeah, well, I know one of the main anti-communist intellectuals in the United States, who kind of defined U.S. foreign policy during the late Cold War and was an advisor to Barack Obama, was Zbigniew Brzezinski. And he was of Polish descent, and ethnic hatred for Russians based on the fact that he was a Polish Catholic kind of defined his motivation. He was against Russians. He wasn't against communism. He was against Russians. And he was very much a Catholic Pole who was very opposed to the Orthodox Church in Russia. And he made that clear. So are you aware of this Brzezinski figure who was very important in the United States in anti-communism?
I can say you that now the real leader of Poland, it's not Polish president, it's not Polish prime minister, it's the US ambassador, and his name is Mark Brzezinski. He is the son of this ambassador. Yes, and he is now Poland is real colony. That Brzezinski, he decided who is in power. There is a lot of funny situation that in the last 8 years we had the government of peace, and this is the Conservative Party For example, where is very many people homophobic and they wanted forbidden some demonstration LGBT, and in one demonstration came Mark Brzezinski with the rainbow flag.
Wow.
Nobody, Kaczynski, Duda, Prime Minister Morawiecki, nobody have the courage to criticize him. It's shown that how powerful he is, that he decided to what is the Polish politics. Yes, of course, everybody in Poland know Brzezinski, and it's this situation which we see now in the Ukraine. It was written in his book, How to Destroy Russia. That we need destroy Soviet Union using the ethnic problems in the Soviet Union. And one of the strategies is pushing the Ukrainians against Russians. So if somebody are talking that no, we have unprovoked war which is started by the crazy Putin. No, we have the government in Nazi government in Ukraine since 2014. Which realized the strategy of Brzezinski, which is written in one of his books, this big chessmate.
Indeed. So yeah, I need to start wrapping this up. I can do maybe one or two more questions, and then we should probably conclude. Is that okay?
Okay. It's from chat. Caleb, tell us why USA establishment is so aggressive and disrespectful for East Europe and Russia. What is the ideology?
Well, I think it really gets down to the fact that the way Russia rebooted its economy after the fall of the Soviet Union was becoming a major oil and gas exporter. And the United States, wants to dominate the global oil and gas markets. And Russia is a competitor. It used to be, after the fall of the Soviet Union, Russia was a captive market. They had to import all their food and other products from the United States. But now Russia is a competitor. It's selling its own oil and its own natural gas on the international markets, and they don't want any competition. They want to dominate the market for themselves. I mean, it's the export of capital, like Lenin talked about in his book, Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism.
Okay, so the last question, but I think that is very big question. Now let's talk about Trotskyists. Both you and I were Trotskyists in the past. How do you assess the fact that the slogans of Trotskyists very often coincide with the slogans of American imperialists? An example is the destruction of Libya, when Trotskyists showed the solidarity with the workers' councils in so-called workers' councils in Benghazi. They said similar nonsense during the Maidan in 2014.
Well, I have written a lot on this question because I've spent a long time analyzing it. I believe that Trotsky never really embraced Leninism. Lenin said that they needed to form a new party, a party of new type, and that Western imperialism was the main danger, and that it was about unifying the world against imperialism. And that meant that fighting for the national liberation of oppressed countries, like Poland or like Ireland or like, countries in Africa, etc. Even if it's just, it's on a class collaborationist basis with different classes, that's a good thing. Whereas Trotsky held on to pre-Leninist Marxism and the belief that it was about the workers in the Western countries seizing their factories, the worker versus the employer. And he did not accept Lenin's understanding that it was a fight against imperialism. He then developed this theory of permanent revolution that saw that the peasantry in the colonized world had no revolutionary potential. He opposed Lenin, forming a bloc with the peasants, a revolutionary movement of the workers and the peasants. He said only the working class. And he thought the West was the future, the West was the best. And Trotsky never really accepted that Bolshevism is saying we're breaking with Western social democracy. We're struggling to defeat imperialism. We're forming a united front in the various countries struggling against imperialism, where the working class joins with the capitalists and the peasants to defeat imperialism. Trotsky never accepted that. And that Trotsky's entire tradition was about not really accepting Leninism and accepting Bolshevism. And it was more about trying to hold on, trying to be the more radical edge of European social democracy. And Lenin pointed out accurately that European social democracy deteriorated into social imperialism, a mechanism for stabilizing the imperialist countries by, giving crumbs and benefits to some workers, and then strengthening the imperialist powers in order to colonize the world. Trotsky, one of his defining positions was he believed he wanted to create the United States of Europe, and he was calling for the creation of a European Union. Before there was ever a European Union, back before the Bolshevik Revolution, he was going around speaking about the need for a European Union, the United States of Europe. And Lenin said, we don't want that because that would strengthen the imperialist and colonial powers. But Trotsky was very committed to the idea of a United States of Europe. And I think that that's really, when it gets down to it, that is the difference between Trotskyism and genuine Marxism. Genuine Marxism is fighting against imperialism for the liberation of entire nations, with the working class at the lead, seeing socialism as a necessity to defeat imperialism. Trotskyism is holding on to the Marxist movement of the past, which is just the struggle of the worker against the employer, and that sees the West as the center of capitalism, the most progressive place. That's what I think is really the essence there.
Okay, as I understand, you don't have time, but I hope that me and the viewers from Poland, we are waiting from inviting you from many times. So I hope that you will come back soon.
I will. I absolutely will, and I thank you for your patience today. On another Saturday, I'll have much more time. So thank you very much. I do appreciate the interview. I give my best to your audience. Stay strong in the face of this government that I'm sure is very repressive. I know you have horrendous laws persecuting communists in Poland. So I admire your bravery and your courage in continuing to oppose NATO and continuing to defend the legacy of communism and socialism in your country. So I give my salute to you from the Center for Political Innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you for conversation.
Yep.